Morning, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about prepping Midnight Suns for Everwinter. So I am going to Everwinter. I got my tickets in about 6 weeks. I've decided to play Midnight Suns there, partly because I love Convocation, but it's just we're not getting anything new yet. There's no crisis changes. Like, it's the same old, and prepping for 6 weeks would essentially just be me debating if A1 should be Taskmaster or some other three or some other splash, and then something. It wouldn't be that exciting, and I think versus some of the meta stuff, it can be really obnoxious without some type of weird fighty splash to where I'm just not like. I don't want to say not excited. Like, I still obviously love Wizards, and I've done very well with them, generally speaking. It's just, you know, I like the process, and I like the process of Midnight Suns back before the monsters came out and all the splashes that are out there. And I'm curious to kind of go through that process again with all the new stuff and just even being more, 20 games is not enough to become, you know, a master of affiliation, especially when I was playing like the same models, and there's models I haven't even touched yet. And so Midnight Suns is it's just more exciting in this moment. And so I'm going to make, I don't call it a series because I don't really make too many series, and I'm not like on a schedule, but there are times when I really want to think about something and go through it, and making these videos helps, and maybe it'll help people who watch it. And I do have a decent number of people who message me about Suns, which is perfectly fine. I don't mind the conversation. Obviously, a lot of us have different views on stuff, and I definitely don't claim to be an expert. And I think, coming into this video, if you're watching this and you play Suns, and I have different opinions, and I'll try not to be I try to acknowledge where maybe I'm different. Do what works for you. I think you'll see a couple instances where it's definitely about player preference and style more than what I think is truly like 100% the effectiveness. I and I think that'll actually come into play a little bit more when we talk about our topic today, which is secure. So I'm setting up an Excel file called a Ghost Deer Nate type thing. Normally I would do this in Jarvis, but I think it's nice to kind of get your thoughts out here and have everything out, because it's not really just a 10-man roster and then go from there. It's, really trying to make decisions about secures and stuff. And what I'm really, one thing too is I'm at the stage where, okay, I know enough about Suns to know how to play them and have a good sense, but I still need things practiced, and I have questions about roster questions. And I haven't made a tab with maybe roster questions, but I probably should. Right? For example, do you need Wong? Right? Is Wong necessary? So that's a question I have, and I need to answer that question for when I'm making my roster. And that kind of comes with playing and saying, well, if I leave Wong out, do I feel like Immortal Hulk, when he goes in, when he's needed, do I need Wong with him to heal and remove stagger? Is that something I have to, think about? I think Wong is a good example of, like, if you just cut him from your list and practice without him, you really quickly see, like, am I annoyed that I don't have a 2? Especially if you don't have another, like, out of affiliation 2. Like, do I have trouble making teams? And the other one would be, like, do I really miss his heal in round 1 stuff? Because it's really cool, and it's really nice to say, wow, I got to charge on somebody, or I got to pounce turn 1 with Black Panther. And then you're like, but then I have to fucking play Wong. And then, like, he's not, like, if you put that threat into something else that makes something stronger, maybe that over time is better, right? Like, he definitely, Wong's like a great, like, you can definitely see what he does and appreciate, like, him giving power and healing. But it's also, I mean, it's a cost, right? There's a cost to having a 2-threat do that can't really do anything else. Like, he doesn't, I think Jomanji said it, like a win more type character in some ways. Not all the places, but we're talking about Suns specifically. So this is, I'm going to set up a roster event at one point where I'll have, characters affiliated, color code things like Nate does, whatever. But yeah, so I think we'll talk about 2 topics in this first one. The first one being affiliated characters, the next one being secures, because I haven't done anything else. Not thought out yet. So this is affiliated characters. I put them in 4 tiers. And so this isn't a tier list of power. It's my internal tier list of roster building. And what I mean by that is, if I was to come fresh on a Midnight Suns roster, remember, this is me prepping a roster for a tournament, right? Things can change over time. If I don't care about new releases, at this point, there shouldn't be any releases between now and Everwinter that are official for Everwinter, right? If something gets spoiled, which I don't know if it will, it doesn't matter. If it's not out yet, it doesn't matter. So this is me saying the landscape of MCP right now is this, the meta, whatever, is this. This is what I like to play. Here's the models that are affiliated in Midnight Suns. And the categories here in my mind are A is they're in my list. I will, like, I can't imagine, I mean, you're taking Blade, he's your freaking leader. But Voodoo and Mummy are just so strong for their, they're just so strong and they're affiliated that I'm like, I have to take these models. Like, there's no way I'm building a roster without these models. And they're kind of the first three in. I would tell that to anybody. When you go back to the D threats are ones I'm just not interested in. I have zero, not going to play them, not going to test them, don't give a shit. Like, Doctor Strange is pretty obvious. He's not that good, strong. Like, he's not a leader. I don't see any reason to ever bring Doctor Strange. At least in the time frame I have, I could obviously I just don't feel like he's ever going to be the model I want to use. If you like him, he's not unusable. Moon Knight is probably a better example of this commentary. Moon Knight's probably fine. He's a 3-threat. He has a range 4 rapid fire. He's stealth. I mean, if somebody brought to me and said, I really like Moon Knight, I want to play him, I'd be like, whatever. He's a 3-threat. Mummy's probably the strongest 3-threat we have. Then we have Iron Fist, Black Panther 3, Black Cat, Moon Knight. We have 5 of them, right? In my roster itself, it's probably going to have 2 or 3. He's my, like, 5th choice. So I'm not even going to consider him. So this is, again, he's not a D tier model versus, like, an A tier model, even though they probably are separated by a good bit. It's more of, I'm not even going to think about Moon Knight. He's never going to cross my mind. C tier is the ones that are basically, I'm probably not going to play them, but I at least want to, like, keep my brain open a little bit. I'm a big proponent against Black Cat and Sons. It's hard to argue. She's one of the best 3-threats in the game. She's affiliated, which is always good. But even then, like, I think about this. We have so many models to make affiliation now, right? With Mummy coming in is a really big one, especially at the 3-threat range. Like, we have models to make affiliation, so I don't feel like she's in this world where, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take Blade, Wong, Black. Like, first off, you just say anytime Black Cat would come in, you could just take Mummy. It's not a true thing, but just think Mummy's popular, strong enough to do that. Then when is she coming in? When you're gonna take 2 3s in affiliation? Like, first off, it's probably Blade, Mummy, and then her. This feels weird. Because she doesn't really benefit from any of the cards, right? Like, okay, who cares about Bats with her and who cares about Siege, the 2 main cards? Like, if she's not good with those cards, then in my mind, I can treat her like an unaffiliated model, right? Like, I can think of her like that. She doesn't benefit from the cards that much. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't really need her in my roster. Like, she's not bringing some weird, like, opening up some splash spot that, like, was something else. She doesn't do, I mean, she's unique in her own way, but so to me, just to me, like, I wouldn't splash her. And so the way I view her is like, okay, well, she doesn't do anything else that great for me, so why would I even consider her? So she should probably be D, because I'm not going to think about her. But it's hard to deny, like, she's a very strong 3 and people could run her. Like, she's one of those ones that, like, you'll never see me take her in my list probably for a long time unless something changes. But if somebody put her in her list, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. Moon Knight, I can be like, do you really like Moon Knight? Like, is he, like, your favorite Marvel character? Black Cat, you could just be like, oh, she's strong in scenario stuff. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. Not my style. That's a style thing, too. I'm not into, like, anyway, I'm not here to argue against Black Cat the whole time. You've all heard me talk about her. She's not in there. BP3, I have internal personal issues with BP3, Black Panther 3, Bass, whatever you want to call him. He's definitely, I hate the term slot machine. I don't hate it, but I use it sometimes, and people use it. He does feel like that though. Like he he just yeah. If anybody rolls, he has the opportunity to do a lot of damage. It also takes a lot of power, and he needs his rolls to go well. But that's like, I think you see like it's like buying a scratch off where like the top prize is $1 million versus buying a scratch off where the top prize is $50,000. You're not probably going to win either one. So why does it matter? Like what the top end? So the top end damage for him is insane. But if you actually in practice, like with the power, with the rolls you need, the inconsistency, the likelihood, like I just feel like you see him whiff. Like okay, you have 4 power. You need to, you want to spender into builder into either pounce um, or another spender, and then you just whiff the first spender, and like you don't hit the trigger, and like okay, now you have to do a builder raw without the rerolls, and it just okay, you've done a 7 dice and a 5 dice into nothing potentially, or you're on 3 power and you need to really hit that builder to do 1 damage, so then you can spender to then hopefully get another builder to hopefully get a pounce, and then you whiff it. It's 5 dice against whatever. And okay, now you're doing 2 5 dicers and a pounce when you could have did 5 dice, 7 dice, 5 dice reroll pounce. All right, so that's the thing. And then so okay, he's slightly stealth is great, sure. The no reroll thing is overblown. He's still 5. He's still 5 health with 3s across the board. Like okay, that's old Black Cat type stuff. The no crit thing on Black Cat is way better because it really prevents the spikes. He still goes down. Like he's not tanking the world with those 2 abilities. And so I kind of only really want 2 3s in my roster that are affiliated right now. He would be the 3rd one. If I took another affiliated 3, he would be next. But currently Iron Fist is in there. Iron Fist is very divisive. What's the word? Whatever. Some people really like him. Some people don't like him. I like him. He comes with a great tactics card. He has a pseudo safe grab with the bump back, and I've made videos about Iron Fist and just how like as a 3 threat, the ability to activate some like he has a definite like turnaround ability, right? Now it costs a lot of power. He can get killed by missed attacks. He can get killed by range 4, sure, but he's only a 3 threat, but he's more guaranteed. Like all this talk about Black Panther doing a ton of damage and doing all this stuff, like he needs power for it. Like I think I said it in the chat once. If you're a Black Panther on 7 power, you're like, oh, I'm gonna hit this spender into a builder to build 1 to spender again to build power to pounce. I'm gonna do spender attack, pounce, and I'm gonna do tons of damage, right? And like I said, you could miss 1 or 2 things and then you're screwed, right? You could just whiff one of them, not hit the trigger, and then you deeply goes less. And if Fist is on 7 power, he can like, oh, I can fly and kick somebody and then activate them. There's no rolls. A lot of the stuff Fist does can be prevented because you can do the math on it. Like you're not always like, oh, I need to hit 3 power on my builder. Like he's like, oh, I have a gainer that can place me next to somebody and then I can activate somebody. Don't need to do damage. I just roll the dice. I mean, sure, it's a 9 dice attack, which is great, but like that's my reasoning is that he's the slot machine. Black Panther's the slot machine lottery ticket. Iron Fist is like okay, it could go really well, but when you have the power, it's going to go well, right? And when you don't have it, it's not. You're not depending on something per se. So that's my thought there. Ghost Rider Frankenstein. Not interested by Frankenstein that much. Never played him. If anything, I mean, he's only good because he's affiliated. Like his power gen is weird. If you like him, I'm not gonna deny him. He's not really up there for me, so I'm not like rushing to try him. But maybe I'll throw him in. Ghost Rider again. I've heard good things, heard bad things. I'm probably more of a werewolf type player, so I'm at least gonna try werewolf more. But I'm not gonna hate people if they want to take their Ghost Rider. He definitely does some cool stuff. The B tier is it's probably in my list. It's not like the auto, like, oh my god, if you don't take this, like if you don't have Blade, Voodoo, and Mummy in your roster, I'm gonna be like, what are you doing? What are you really putting in for something else? The B tier is like, I think most people should have at least two to four of these. In my current roster, I think I have all of them, with Wong being a question mark, more probably the biggest question mark, just because like if I needed to or not. I've never played Immortal Hulk in like my 30 plus games of Midnight Suns, but recognize I recognize that sometimes you need to roll dice first people, and he does that job well. Do I want him to be my plan A? I don't. I think it's a little too unga bunga for me. I kind of hate that phrase. I don't know why he's a little too like on the nose with that. Like just let's just roll dice. Um, and there are some people you'll see when we pick secures who do that. They play like I'm gonna play all down the middle, all the shit, just force eye hawk every game type stuff, and it can work. Obviously, we've seen people succeed with it. Probably a little bit better when like you get matched up with people that have ease as well. And obviously it's a lot of dice rolling at that point. But sometimes you need to be able to do that. I mean, that's the honest truth, and that's something with Convo that I've seen. It's like it just doesn't feel like I have that kind of like, hey, we're gonna roll in the mud, and I'm gonna be scary as well, and let's go. And I think he provides that. And I think you can put him in your roster and not dedicate the rest of your roster to being like around him with like patch up and stuff like that. And I'm curious to test him more. Like I really do need to like bring him out when I think he's good and get a feel for him. And I think it's interesting to test the limits of like not having patch up and stuff like that, or even not having Wong and seeing like, does he seem shitty if I don't have these things, and then kind of thinking from there. So yeah, that's where I'm at with the affiliated characters. It's really like C and D's are probably not going to be in my roster come Everwinter. I'd be very surprised if any of those are in my roster. Again, I'm not going to hate on people who want to take some of those models. I'm not here to. It's not a power tier list. It's a what I want, what I think I need, and where I think my list will end. My list will end with everybody in A tier, nobody in C and D tier, and then a mix of people in B to some extent. And that's where like the questions come in. So this is kind of get you to where my mind is at. I don't want you to take it for gospel. So let's talk about secures a little bit. So these are all the secures in the game. And, I've seen, if there's one thing I've definitely seen with Midnight Suns is people are all over the place with like secures. We've seen people take D-shape, which I have done for a long time before the new monsters came out. We've seen people who just go like intrusions, gamma demons type stuff. I've seen Infinity Formula, Meteors, Fisk. Yeah, it's definitely all over the place, and I'm definitely not settled on it yet. And part of the process of talking about it is to kind of get to where I can get closer to what I want to test and what I want to settle on. So I've seen people take Madman, which I've thought of before, but I feel like when I took Madman, so like this is the kind of thing too, right? We have new models now. Your roster changes, like what your makeup of your roster changes. And so what you splash and stuff might impact what your crises are, right? Because like it can vary. I'll give you an example. Some people like Gwenum, some people don't. I'm not here to argue Gwenum right now. We'll talk about that one day when we do the splash section. She's very good on D shapes. She's very fast. She can get between them, throw people off. Like she's very strong on D shapes in my opinion. Not surprisingly. If you take all E's and C's or something, then maybe you don't need her. But I also thought at one point she would be good on Madman because she is so fast. But she doesn't have the power gen to keep up with Madman, in my opinion. She's not bad on it, but she didn't feel as good as I thought to where like, oh, I want to put in Madman all the time. And so now that my list has changed a bit, where I don't have Bill right now, whatever, maybe Madman can come back because the way it's played is not as bad for me as I thought before. Not saying it's coming back, but just something like as you change your splashes and models and say, oh, Werewolf can go back between them. He's 4 physical. Like, oh, I could play if I'm playing Werewolf, then maybe I'm okay on that. And then obviously threat level matters a lot too, where if you think you have a really good 19, maybe you put in more 19 threats. Stuff like that. So I don't think we'll go through the whole crisis. Like, I'm not going to figure it out today, like the three I want. But I think I can definitely remove some. I would definitely not take Gamma personally. So I guess I can just make it red if I'm not interested in it. So red, I think Gamma's out for me. I think Sword is out. I think both of these are. I don't want to play 15 threat. I don't want to have to go against some of these 15 threat teams down the middle. Like, I don't really like maybe Blade, Eyehawk, 4. Like, if I'm going to play down the middle, I'd probably prefer to have a couple more threat in there to maybe get a better splash in or something, or get Wong in. So I don't think I'm going to be taking these. I don't think we're bad at them necessarily, but the difference is, and people talking about this a lot, like, there's been times where I've played Sword and I'm like, man, I feel so good on Sword. But it all comes on the back of my secures, or my extracts, sorry. So sometimes you put something in, and there's two things you got to realize. One, you're going to play, three things to realize when you put something in your roster. One, you're going to play on it a lot more. There's a difference between I am good on this when it comes up selectively, and I want to do this like once every 6 games. Something, to that extent. Threat level. Like, Gamma, if you have Gamma in your roster and you take your secures, you have to be ready for Gamma 15. If you don't take Gamma in your roster, you can avoid Gamma 15 all the time, because you can just take extracts that have different threat levels, and then obviously if you pool on theirs, you assume that you're going to pick your secures, which doesn't always happen. You can say, oh, I don't have to play Gamma on 15, and so that eliminates like a whole other thing. So the threat level of your secures matters much less, in my opinion, than it matters, because you could get it. So you have to think about it. Like, if you don't take something, a secure, you don't have to worry about the threat levels much, because you could basically say, oh, I'm only going to play Gamma on my threat levels. Spider Portals, I think, is out. I think Scoundrels is out. Again, if I'm going to play a D shape, I'm not playing Spider Portals, especially with the people like Gwenem and stuff who are potential D shape splashes that have bad energy defense. Blades isn't bad, it's 3, but like the being placed off 2 just seems so shitty. I mean, sure, we have bump and stuff, but the power it would take to do bumping and power it takes for bumping and pay to flips on a D shape does not interest me. To the point that I wouldn't want to take it myself. I'll put it that way. If I did ever take Spider Portals, I could see a world where like you just want to screw other people and be like, we're going to make it hard on you. But I don't foresee, like, that is, one, I'm not going to take 3 D shapes, and I feel like it's one of the last D shapes I'd take. Scoundrels, again, I just don't think we need that fast of a game. We're not inherently good on Scoundrels by any means with, like, cover stuff. Can we play it at 20 threat? Sure, and this is another thing too, right? Like, if we take it, we are at the whim of the extract values of our opponent. If we don't take it, sure, 20 threat Scoundrels might seem good, but now it's like the opposite of the Gamma problem. If we take it and we get spider-infected Scoundrels, we're now putting 10 points on the board, and they can play 17, and we can be like, oh, maybe we're not fast enough to do it. I actually do think my team would be okay at Scoundrels, but again, I don't want to take it all the time. I don't want to have to play, like, webs on it and stuff like that. We don't have as much control as like my combo did, where I felt very comfortable on it. So I think these are out. Like, I honestly don't see a world where I take these in my roster. And I want to say that, like, again, I think a good roster should be able to handle a lot of crisis and threats and shapes, right? So you shouldn't be like, oh my god, if I get Gamma, I'm going to lose the game. But that doesn't mean, like I can make an argument that we can play on all these, because if you build a good roster, you should be able to. That's kind of the point there. But but I'm also saying that I don't want them to be my plan A and put them in my roster. So that's the other commentary. So I think these are just out. I don't foresee a world where we're playing these. I'm trying to think if there's any like tier 2 ones. Fisk, Meteors, Madmen. Is that fair? Yeah, Meteors. I think if I had to do an off the cuff type of thought process, I think this would be where I'm at. I don't even need to color code this anymore. Where this would be, in fact, maybe like this. This looks better. How it looks matters, guys. How you organize your files matters. This is probably like my tier, where this is like absolutely not. This is a maybe. And this is like decent stuff, right? I feel like this is how I feel. I could see myself taking 3 of these. Okay. And again, we'll expand on this as we make videos and stuff like that. I see myself never taking these 3 to Everwinter. I could see myself taking 3 of these or 2 to 3 of these. And I could see maybe if I come up with something sneaky, putting these in. I don't want to count them out because as my splashes and as I get more games in, I can see worlds where like I don't like meteors. I feel like I think I have some aversion to some of these because of other rosters I play, like Convocation. Like I've always hated meteors, but some of the things I take, like I mean the energy defense be damned, like the spider portals, like at least like Werewolf by Night has 4/4/4. It's more of a brawly one. There's less points. You're not getting pushed away. But also, I have ideas of flexes and splashes like Red Skull 2, who is like, okay, he only has 2 energy defense, but so do his grunts. And the fact that his grunts can keep trying to flip them, you know, it gives you an extra activation. That's a whole other splash commentary. So I think this is where I'm at to where, like, as we figure out splashes and stuff like that, we come back to this and say, oh, maybe I want to take this, maybe I want to take that. Because, like, intrusions, for example, I feel like we're fine on it, but for some reason I feel weird on it. Like I don't know if I love playing intrusions to the point that I want to have them in there. I get why we take it. I mean, we have some very good fighting models. We have iHawk who can beat down on intrusions. There's definitely reasons to play it. But again, it comes back to this, like, I don't know if I want to play it myself. And that's what we're trying to test out. And so part of this is also like, you don't know until you try, and so I've never played Infinity Formula, at least recently, with the new roster. And so, like, if I'm thinking that might be good, I want to try it. I want to try it and see if I feel like it feels good. Fisk, I mean, we have iHawk. Like, we have iHawk, and he's immune to stun, and we have people who can shed stun, and, like, there's worlds where we're good on Fisk. I have to, so I don't even want to take out Fisk. I don't even want to say that we're bad with Fisk. It's just like, do I want to go down that route? And Fisk is the interesting one because from a meta call, like, Fisk is annoying for a lot of teams, right? And if you have a pretty good Fisk team, even at different threat levels, you can't just guarantee 16. Like, having a good Fisk 16 is great until the enemy pulls their extracts with like a 19, then you have to play 19, which is normally not a big deal. You can always adjust, but like you have to be able to plan for that. Like, having a good sword 15 is great when you're not the sword player. When you're the sword player, you're only getting sword most of the time on priority, and so they get to pick a different threat. So if you're like, I have amazing sword 15, but it sucks at 19 for some reason, then you'd be like, you need to rethink your taking of these. Like, you can't take these for their point values. You might get their point values, and it does help. Like, if you play intrusions and virus is very popular, you're going to play 19 all the time. But be aware that there are chances you play these with different threat values, and like if you have the perfect 19 intrusions team and then you get spider infected, you're like, oh shit. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you have to think about. Like, secures feel different when you're only playing on your extracts because you're only playing on the shapes you like, and then you hit one where it's like Fisk spider infected and things are different. So anyway, we'll talk about this more in the next video. We'll go through, and thanks for listening.